First, relationships. If there's one thing that I want you to think about when you leave here tonight, it is that relationships are the key to a successful practice. You will learn of new opportunities through your relationships. You will advance your career through your relationships, and you will achieve better results for your clients as a result of your relationships. Relationships are everything. They're the backbone of practicing law. And I like to talk about relationships rather than connections, because the word connections, if you look at the definition, it really suggests a linkage or an association with another person, where the word relationship suggests a deeper bond. And I think in this world, we're increasingly focused on social media and virtual communications, and we tend to value the number of connections we have on LinkedIn, the number of contacts we have in our database, the number of friends we have on Facebook. We forget about how important it is to have real relationships with people. And I think that's a mistake. Because of the hundreds or thousands of people you connect with through social media, only a very small group, probably a handful, will actually be instrumental to you in your career as you develop it. And that handful will be comprised mostly of people with whom you have relationships. I mean, connections sometimes are useful, but the people who have relationships with you are the people who are motivated to help you in a time when your practice is challenged. They are the people who challenge you to be the best lawyer that you can be. Connections with whom you have no other real meaningful relationship can't do that for you. So I'd like to point out that how you incorporate people who have different life experiences than your own into your personal life will impact how successful you are in developing your professional life. I believe that diversity in your personal relationships will allow you to become more comfortable with and open to diversity in your professional lives. My most valued personal relationships are with people with whom I would appear to have nothing in common on a superficial level. I count among my closest friends Muslims, Jews, Catholics, liberals, conservatives, libertarians, Greeks, Croatians, Egyptians, Iranians, Afghanistan. I have friends from all walks of life and countries all over the world, and many of them are not lawyers. We recently got together for a play date. I have a 6-year-old son, and many of my friends also have kids in the same kind of age range, usually from, I'd say, from anywhere from 4 to 10. And my husband and I have this thing. I found that with all the chaos that even 2 kids can create, it's easier just to have 20, right? I mean, the house is destroyed either way, so you might as well have 20. And it's a fabulous way to kind of reconnect with the adults in your life that you don't really have time to see if you do kind of a cocktail play date. So, and I gotta say that having a drink in hand makes the whole thing so much easier. So we recently had about 20 of our friends, and they're people that I just described to you, over with their kids. And it was really fascinating because I actually hadn't thought of it until I was thinking about what I would say to all of you tonight. And I looked back on what those relationships really look like, and I thought about that evening, and I thought, how interesting. At any moment during that night, you would have seen and heard adults of all faiths and walks of life openly debating politics, openly discussing the differences in their religions, and speaking multiple languages. My son, who is 6, actually had at one point a discussion with Hadi, his Muslim friend from Iran, about what happens when you die. And how fascinating is that, right? I mean, a 6-year-old really doesn't have any understanding of that. They're sort of figuring it out for themselves. And somehow ended up in a conversation with a Muslim. He's a Catholic. He ended up in a conversation with a Muslim about what that would look like. What are the differences? And I just thought that was so fabulous, right? I mean, you really just don't see that very often. And I think if you look at me superficially, you wouldn't necessarily expect that that's my life story. But this is my life story, in fact. I love being with people who are not like myself and who have different points of view. And I think one of the things that you have to understand is that there is a commonality, right? We don't superficially look like one another, and we don't even think like one another, except in certain core ways. We have the same values about how we want to raise our children. We have the same respect for education. We have the same desire to establish bonds with our neighbors. We have respect for different viewpoints and a real appreciation for sharing them. Those are the common themes in my friendships and those relationships. And I think that diversity in my personal life enables me to much more easily understand and accept and even encourage diversity in my professional life. And I feel that in my work, I like to emphasize inclusion rather than diversity. Diversity is sort of the term everybody likes to use, but we really want inclusion, right? We want people to feel comfortable enough with one another that they can share views, they can have arguments, right, respectfully. They can share constructive criticism. I like to have teams that are cohesive in the workplace. And I think often I see firms and corporations creating diversity environments where the numbers look good, but in fact people really aren't communicating and working with one another in a way that is inclusive. It doesn't matter, you can have diversity all over your firm, but if people don't feel comfortable working with one another as a cohesive unit, as a team, it's meaningless at the end of the day. And so I like to bring the kinds of things that I do in my personal life into my professional life, because I think that enhances everyone's experience and sort of general happiness in practicing law. And I think it really enables us to more effectively understand our clients' viewpoints. Because fundamentally, really, if we bring it back to what's important on a professional level, it's your ability to have a diverse client base. That's necessary for business reasons, frankly. You can't today in this world survive on a couple of big clients that look and act like you. You need to be able to have a broader scope and diversity in your client base in order to be successful. And I don't think you can really achieve that effectively. You can't market yourself as someone who will understand someone's viewpoint if you have no experience ever in conversing or socializing or having intellectual discussions with people who are not like yourself. So I encourage everyone to really look at their personal relationships first before the professional, because I believe the one follows the other.